Welcome to part 3 of our coaches special series. What we've done so far, we've discussed how mindset challenges show up in 3 big ways, but many, many ways. The first one, burnout. Second one, losing love of training. And the third one, the financial issue is not making ends meet in terms of income. So we've got those 3 big issues that happen. There's loads of other ones that coaches encounter, but those are 3 big ones you see. And in the second episode, the last one, what we did is said why these happen, like what are the beliefs behind them, how they show up in our thoughts, emotions, physical sensations, behaviors, and we explored that, as well as saying, okay, what does success actually look like right now? So right now, if you're listening to this, you've maybe gotten a good insight into where you are right now, how you got there, and what we're going to do today is give you the path out of that, show you the steps that you can move through to grow. Very excited to do this. So there's a 5-step process that we use for creating mindset change within Mindset Rx'd. You actually see a lot of the similar principles in whatever forms of mindset work. So these are principles that apply throughout, and we've used it across, well, thousands of coaches and athletes in different varieties and different forms. So what we've found is this works, and if applied and if like kind of seen as principles as opposed to exact tools, you get so much from this, and you can use it over and over again on different beliefs, different ways to grow.
That's right.
So with that in mind, let's kick things off by saying what that Mindset Rx method is. It's testing, aiming up, presence, proof, and getting specific at the end. Let's start things off with testing. Rachel, what does the testing phase mean to you when you're talking about working with coaches?
Yeah. When working with coaches, the testing phase is about understanding what the thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and physical sensations, and we can also call physical sensations a nervous system response, what those are that is reflecting on a belief. So we find that behaviors are usually the first thing that we notice. So we may say, like, okay, a behavior that I have is I get really nervous when I stand in front of the whiteboard, or a behavior I have that's not serving me anymore is thinking that I'm not good enough to charge more for my services, for my personal training, or whatever it is. So we know what the behavior is. Then we need to understand the thoughts behind it. What's leading to that behavior? What emotions are behind that? And that leads us to understanding what the underlying belief is, or the story or narrative that we're telling is. And once we have that knowledge, that gives us paths into where to go next.
And we know that we need to do this when things aren't panning out as we'd like them to, but we don't know why.
Yeah.
That's essentially, it's like if you're acting in what you think is your own best interest, but you're not making the progress you'd like to, or you kind of can't change your mental state, there's something that's going on that is beneath the surface. There's something unconscious or subconscious that's happening. And what we need to do is bring that to the surface. And okay, this is the first step, and it's maybe the most uncomfortable step in there, because it's like, hey, I'm shining light on something that I'd really rather leave in the dark.
That's right.
But it's that step that is 1000% essential. We have to be looking at what is uncomfortable if we're going to grow. And coaches have as much of that to do as anyone else.
100%. We have a responsibility to grow for our athletes too.
Oh, couldn't have said it better. Exactly. And when we've tested effectively, we'll be coming out that saying, I know what my story is. I know what my narrative is. I know this is the way it shows up, and these are the thoughts that I've got to watch out for on a daily basis. And like, this is the story that I believe that is true that's holding me back. That's really what we want to get to. And just doing that alone, I think back to the first few times that I figured out something around my mindset in coaching. It just gave me so much freedom, and just the kind of like, the weights off my shoulders. It's like the world went from blurry 540 pixel resolution to HD, and I was like,
Yeah.
I see it now, and I can see further, and I can see where I've been, and I understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. And like that kind of self-knowledge is just it's so invigorating for a
Yes.
coach.
Well, it's empowering.
Yes.
Yeah, it's empowering when we know why we've been doing the things that we've been doing, especially when we've been feeling really stuck in our careers, or talked last time about losing the love of training or the love of coaching, which can be devastating. When we understand where that's come from and why, we just, yeah, it's exactly as you said. You feel that like weight lifted off your shoulders, much less burdened.
Yeah. And then building upon that, we can
Yeah.
go from, like, once we've tested, it's like, I always equate this to, you're standing in the middle of the woods, or you're standing in the middle of the wilderness, you don't know where you are,
Yeah.
or you don't know where to go, you're kind of completely lost. The
Mhm.
first thing you need to do is test and figure out, where am I? Like, that's literally the first thing you do. You look at some points on the horizon and take back bearings, and you figure out, this is where I am. So you look around and you see your location, you see the environment you're in, you'll see kind of what's going on. You pinpoint where you are now, and you do that pretty accurately, because there's no point knowing where you want to go until you know where you are first, because any
Exactly.
direction could lead you there.
Yeah.
The next stage is finding out where you want to go, is what we call aiming up. So that, for me, looks like starting off figuring out, what are your goals, what are the things that really drive you, and then drawing from that these kind of bigger, wider principles. Can you take that and run with it, Rachel?
Oh, I sure will. We often think in terms of goal setting as achievements that we kind of check off of a list. Like, these are the things that are important to me. I want to deadlift 400 pounds. I want to have a sub 2 Fran time. I want to be able to run a mile in a certain amount of time. And, in terms of coaching, then we can start to look at, I want this many clients. I want to start a program at my gym. Like, if I knew that I could be successful, these are all of the things that I would do in my coaching career. And that's wonderful. We need to know what the things are that are important to us, but we can derive from those the overall like principles or character skills that are actually important to us. So if I'm thinking about coaching, I want to start a new program. Is one of my principles being autonomous? Do I love like being an entrepreneur and starting new
Mm.
things? Is having a certain number of clients the way that I view having a really deep impact on people? Is it having an impact on more people, or is it having a deeper impact? Like, why are those things important to me? Why do I derive internal satisfaction from them? Sometimes we find that the goals that we've set are not actually our goals, they're the goals that we think we're supposed to have. So that's another way to create even more clarity around our longer term vision.
And what we can draw from that as well, like behind these principles, is who do I want to be at the end of the day? Like,
Who?
what is this type of person? Not
Exactly.
just what do I want to achieve. And it's very common to say, why do I want to achieve it? Like, knowing your why, again, an important thing. But beneath that, there's a who. If you ask
Mhm.
why enough times, you get to, when we're talking about individuals, like who
Yeah.
do you want to be at the end of the day? How do you want to feel?
Mhm.
What kind of character skills do you want to freely display to the rest of the world? Like,
Yes.
what kind of character skills, and this is the more important side, do you want to display to yourself? Like, what kind of reputation do you want to have with yourself? Like,
Mhm.
is this about providing for the people that are around you? Is this about providing certainty and security? Or is this about something else? Is this about your internal growth? And once you've really not, like, dialed in and thought, this is exactly the type of person that I want to be, then you can aim at it in each individual moment. And you can lean into what we've talked about so many times throughout the series: individuality and authenticity. You can become a more authentic version of you, which actually solves a lot of the challenges that you're facing, and solves a lot of them
Exactly.
because you're no longer competing with anyone else. You're no longer plagued with imposter syndrome, because you can't be an imposter being yourself, like, if you truly lean into it. And
Mhm.
what that does for you is you have drive and motivation, yes, but you also have this sense of security, of trust in yourself and the process. You have something to aim for in any given moment, as opposed to feeling lost. And you're really in this better place to coach. And I think that you'll start to pick up those people that you want to work with. You'll start to live that life, that experience that you want to have, as opposed to self-doubt, and as opposed to working hours that you don't really want to, and opposed
Mhm.
to doing all those things in the gym that you don't want to be doing just to make ends meet. And, like, it's weird that by getting more specific and more individual in your coaching career, you'll often present yourself with more advantages than if you spread yourself too thinly. The example that Naval Ravikant uses is, say you're a great locksmith and a great diver. Like some place in somewhere, someone's going to say, I'll develop I've found a shipwreck. And in that shipwreck, there's a safe that I can't get into. And there's no one else in the world that can do that. But you've got these two very specific skills, so you can get down there and do it. Obviously, that's a metaphor for you as a coach. Like, you can find your specific individual pursuit.
Absolutely. Yeah.
From there, we've tested, we've aimed up. So we know what our limiting belief is and how that shows up. We know all the thoughts and emotions that stand up. So we've got that self-knowledge, we've got that kind of separation between our thoughts, that dissociation between our thoughts and emotions and ourselves.
Yes.
We've got our vision. We know what success looks like for us. So we're starting to take these steps forwards. From there, we need presence. So let's focus on now. Rachel, can you talk to me about presence?
I can. When we are present as coaches, we are more in control of our actions. We're more responsive versus reactive, and we're better able to make decisions that serve aiming up and rewrite the stories that we found in the testing phase. And presence looks like a slowness and stillness and confidence, both when we're coaching and also when we're outside of the coaching environment, making long-term plans for our future. We have confidence that we know the steps to take, or we'll figure out the answer eventually through effort. And we also have this, again, like stillness and slowness to us, that we don't feel like we have to say yes to every opportunity. We can take our time and choose, because opportunities are abundant. We can create them for ourselves.
On top of all of that, I think that presence is also this ability to separate, to like create true separation between that which we experience and that which we are. And in doing that, and it's like, that's a kind of a weird, obviously I've been reading too much kind of philosophy at the moment. I'll rephrase that in a way that's just I think I can, but when you start to speak in ways that aren't normally like spoken, like that's probably when it is. Basically, a difference between you and the person that you feel you are, and the thoughts and the emotions that you feel. Like, that's the separation, dissociation that we want to create. Like, can I see my thoughts and emotions and my physical sensations as something other than me? Or am I getting absorbed by them? Am I getting kind of caught up in this constant cycle of like patterns of behaviors and thoughts and emotions? Like, am I feeling anxious, so I push, like, am I feeling so anxious in the middle of the class that I feel like I have to rush around, give everyone help? And does that mean that I'm not actually giving people enough help? Does that mean that I'm perceived as not being generous enough, or slow enough, or certain enough? And does that feed back into a cycle of like constantly underperforming and and feeling like an imposter? Like, and then does that make you more anxious again? And like, a lot of us are in these cycles and loops, and having enough presence, I think, gives us enough space internally to step back and see that, and not get wrapped up in them, to keep some balance in that.
Yes. Well, if you want the scientific term for what you're describing, it's an executive function called metacognition, which is just thinking about thinking. So it's something that can be developed and built like a muscle. Any executive function can be developed over time, because our brain's really plastic. We can, in fact, learn new tricks.
Fantastic. Exactly right. And when we've done that as coaches, we feel more certain. We feel more secure. We feel more stable in the moment, and we're less likely to get caught up in these patterns, like obsessively drinking caffeine, even though we don't need it and we know that it's not helping for us, or on doing training sessions that we don't actually want to do. All these kind of things. And that are leading to imposter syndrome, that are leading to burnout, that are leading to losing the love of training, and all the other problems that coaches face. Not to mention just not feeling entirely happy and healthy. And that's a huge one that coaches will face.
Yes.
So we're present. We've tested where we are. We know our limiting beliefs, and we know where we're aiming, and we're starting to walk that path. And the presence is giving us enough balance to be stable on that and not fall back into the ruts of old patterns. From there, we start to enter proof, which for me means proving that the old story, the old limiting belief is wrong, and the new story is actually more true and something you can rely on more, embedding that in. What does this process mean to you, Rachel, the process of proof, the fourth step of the Mindset Rx method?
So interesting. This happens frequently when we're working with athletes and coaches. They'll share that they are realizing that they're a different person suddenly. So they kind of have this moment of stepping back and thinking, "Oh, I'm changed somehow, and I didn't realize that it was happening incrementally. Just sort of arose in me, and the awareness is what arose. But they had been practicing things very carefully through the Mindset Rx methodology."
Yeah, and we quite often see that, like with athletes and coaches, we see that often we get these kind of insights like, oh, I'm crushing it right now, I'm doing really well, and I'm like this person. But unless we take the time to physically fire those neurons together over and over and over again, that's not going to create the pathway that creates change. So there's physical structures happening behind this. And for me, in the proof section, what I'm looking to do is reinforce these thought patterns however we can. So the AMWAP is a tool that we use time again. And the reason why we do that is to build proof, to build this positivity, to build the self-belief, the kind of the knowledge of, hey, I am improving. Like, look at all these ways where I've been confident and I've lent into my individuality, and I didn't get burnt, I didn't get hurt, I didn't feel like an imposter. Look at all these ways where I was actually healthy and I'd crush these sessions, and look at all these times when I did make enough money, as opposed to constantly thinking about where I didn't. And that kind of repetition and the emotion rewires those pathways to the point where that becomes your new reality. But you've got to rewire it, otherwise you'll default into the old path. So the presence and proof phase work really well together.
Yes. And the rewiring of those neurons takes time and reps and a lot of presence. And the presence is a key component there, because it is really easy to fall back into those ruts. We need some amount of accountability for ourselves in order to keep doing that.
So we can see there that this happens as a process. Like, first you figure out what's kind of going wrong, then you're building on like, okay, where do I want to go? Then you're present, you're focused on the moment, and then you're reinforcing like, these are all the reasons why actually I'm great and I am worthy and I am good enough to do this. And then what that does in my mind is create this stability, this kind of baseline of mental health and mental well-being, and what is essentially a good mindset. It creates this foundation. It's like getting your sleep right, like that kind of element to creating health, or getting rid of processed food, or hydrating enough. These kind of foundational things where it's like, I'm doing more than the bare minimum and I've equaled everything out and I'm in this really good place. It's like, instead of just doing cardio, it's like building a bit of strength stuff in as well. It's like, it's that kind of element of like, I've got this foundation. And then we get specific, and the specific phase for coaches is about optimizing. It's about turning up and being your absolutely best self. Instead, it's like, it's going from a 6 out of 10 to a 9.5 or a 10 out of 10 in each session. And there's many ways we can do that. But before we talk about exactly how to do that, like, why is this so important, Rachel? And I think it kind of answers itself, but why is this so important?
Yeah, we as human beings value growth, and showing up as our best selves repeatedly, again, rewrites the stories that we were discussing in the testing phase, but it also creates more opportunities to solve the problems that we've been talking about over the past couple of episodes, which is, we're showing up as our best selves in our classes and with our personal training clients, we're way more likely to make enough income. If we're showing up as our best possible selves when we are in recovery phases or recovery parts of our day, we're less likely to get burned out. And if we are tuned in to our best selves and what's truly motivating to us and not emotionally or physically draining, we're also much more likely or less likely to lose the love of training and lose the love of coaching. So showing up, doing that optimization is what solves the problems that, we kind of started with in this podcast series.
Exactly right. And then when we do it enough times, what this ultimately leads to is those moments where you look back at your life and you think, how did I get here? This is far beyond what I ever thought was possible. And it's because you've done all the foundational work, but you've also taken time to investigate how you can show up best before your sessions. Like, that you're no longer relying on a double espresso. And you can tell what my my weapon of choice was to get me in the right mood to coach, which has disastrous consequences halfway through a training session or a coaching block. So that's one thing that we can do. And there's so many ways that we can visualize what success looks like for us. We can find really what works for you, and this is the individual aspect. And this is about what small changes can we make? How can we adapt this to you? How can we run your days more efficiently so you get more time with your family or with your loved ones, or to just take time out of the gym? And once you've got this optimization phase, once you've got this specific phase, it's the equivalent of an athlete thinking, okay, how can I tweak this mental technique for this lift? Or how can I tweak this thing for monostructural work or recovery work? This is about you becoming more individually you and leaning into it. And what this is doing, like I said, is building this baseline of mindset and then growing for it.
Love it.
And what I'd love to do is, if you feel like that is something that you'd like, is consider the level 1. If you think that your mindset is if you think that process is something that would help you, the level 1 is absolutely for you. This is our 5-week coaching cert. We'll be working with a really small number of coaches, probably 15 or so coaches. It's fully digital, fully online. So no matter where in the world you are, no matter what your coaching schedule is, no matter if you've got another job and you've kind of got split shifts and all that kind of stuff, we can find a way to make it work for you. And the way that's going to work is we'll have video training, we'll have daily encounters with our coaches, Rachel and I will be giving you feedback amongst some other coaches as well. Jason, Laura, they'll probably be jumping in and helping with you. And we'll all be doing this together to help you grow your mindset. And you'll be in this community of A, coaches like us who've been through this process, but B, coaches who are ready to go on this journey and who are struggling with similar things to you. We will be starting this course in the middle of April, and we'd love to have you on board. And we run through that process over the 5 weeks. We test, we aim up, we get present, we add proof, then we get specific at the end. And if you'd like to become involved in this, best way to do this is check out our Instagram, which is Mindset Rx'd. So Mindset RxD, Romeo X-ray Delta. And then shoot us a message or look out for some posts. If there are no posts that you can see immediately, just shoot us a message. And those places will go. Those are kind of limited places, and we don't take on huge quantities of coaches at once because it's not personal enough. It's not the way we like to work with people. So shoot us a message. What will happen from there is you and I will get on a call, and we'll just simply chat through whether this is the right thing for you. I'll try and coach you a little bit. I'll try and show you a few ways that you can kind of grow. And there's no obligation to sign up at all. It's just you and I having a chat, and we can go from there. So with that in mind, shoot on over to Mindset Rx'd Instagram page. Do it now, especially if you're driving. No, don't do it if you're driving. And just we'll take it from there. There's
chaos, Tom Foxley. What's going on?
Chaos. Do whatever. It was going so well. Just head over to Instagram. Shoot me a message. I'll reply personally, and we can find a time that works for us both to chat on the call. Has to be done ASAP because, like I said, limited posters, and we are starting on a certain date. So get in there and we can discuss any questions you may have. thank you for listening to this process. It's been really fun to record. Rachel, like, it's been great chatting with you as always, but I'm sure you've enjoyed this too.
Oh, 100% I have. It's my favorite thing is working with coaches.
Yes, exactly. Couldn't agree more. Any last things to add?
Oh, I hope you sign up. It's such a great program, and we've had so much success with it.
Yeah. And it is most fun that I get to have as well. I think
Fun.
working with coaches. Yeah, the kind of the positive oil spill effect that happens of like, you know, you're affecting people who are going to affect people. And it's really fun.
For sure.